Hello, welcome back. In this video, I'm just going to go over how to use methods in a little bit, more advanced version. Instead of just having a main method call a different method and then go back to the main method, continue with the main method code, and then maybe call another method. Here, I'm gonna have the main method call a different method, which is going to call a different method. And before I jump into the video, you might be wondering like, why are methods important, right? I could, in theory, just write every single bit of code that I want in the main method, maybe use one or two other methods and call it a day, right? Because setting up a method is kind of a hassle, right? We need to think about what we're going to get, what we're going to return back, what I want to do in the method, the math, the logic. Things might be altered between creating a method rather or just, keeping everything into your main method. Now, to answer this question, right, we have to think about some kind of a long-term project, right? Or think about a project where you need to do something continuously, right? If I'm making a bot to, for example, set up usernames or passwords, right? I want to call a specific segment of logic or a specific print statement, something like that, right? Multiple times throughout my code. And instead of hard coding, well, writing that same bit of code out every single time, I could, in theory, just call a separate method which has the same purpose and is going to do the same logic or the same print statement or anything essentially. And it's just going to be a lot faster, right, for your computer, for memory, all that jazz. But it's also going to be a lot cleaner, right? In case, let's say, you put a hold on a project for maybe a month, 2 months, maybe even a year, right? You want to go back, well, you need to understand how your code is working. If I have different methods and I have, commented out code and I have like method names and variables that make sense, it's going to be much easier for me to read, understand, and then implement my code rather than having a whole, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 lines of code in just a single method. So that's essentially why people and coders and developers write methods, just to keep everything clean. And that's why it's a good habit to split things into methods and just helps overall. So I'm just gonna jump right into it. Here I'm gonna just explain my code first. I have int math number, right? And basically it's going to be calling the math method, and whatever the math method spits back, which in this case is going to be an int, is going to be stored in this number or this int math number variable. And all the main method is going to do is just print out that number, right? And if we jump down to the math method, it takes in no parameters, right? And it just sets up two variables over here, int number, which is 55, and int times, which is 5. And it's going to be calling a different method, right, which is called average. And average takes in two parameters, int number, int times, and these are the variables that are passed in. And whatever the average method is going to spit back, which is a double, is going to be stored into this avg average variable. And the math method is just going to return average. However, it's going to typecast it into int because, as you can see, math is going to be returning an int, and the double, variable is obviously a double. And so that's going to give us an error if we don't typecast it. Now, if we go down to the average, method, we have essentially the same thing. We have a double average variable, and all it does is it just divides num, which in this case is 55, and times, which is 5, and store that into a double value. And I have this print statement here to show kind of like the before and after the typecasting. It's going to return average. So if we look at this, from a timeline or kind of like a mind map view, we can see that the main method is going to be calling the math method, right? And then the math method over here is going to be calling the average method. The average method is going to spit something back to the math method, which is going to push something back to the main method. So it's kind of a lot of jumping around, and in this case, it's kind of flowy, logical, right? It goes from top to bottom, then back to top, right? However, when you're writing code or something, it's not always going to be as clean or as logical to follow, visually, but it definitely gets the job done. So I'm going to run this code over here, and just let's take a look at it. and I haven't used this program in some time, so it's gonna take some time. Okay, here we are. So as you can see, the first number that's printed is 11.0, and then typecast it's gonna be 11, and that makes sense because here we have our average value is going to be 11.0. 55 divided by 5 is 11, but since it's a double, it's gonna have point 0 at the end. And typecasted, we're just gonna get rid of the point 0 and push back 11. And so that's just a little example of how we can use methods to really organize and make our code a lot more easier to read, easier to work on, and just overall faster. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you next time.